Join us as we hear the stories of purpose-driven individuals who propel nonprofits into the spotlight and make a lasting impact on the world. In this episode, Susan Nichols discusses the synergy between her consulting and nonprofit experiences. I'm your host, Jamila Robinson, and you're watching Elevate Your Impact. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Elevate Your Impact, where we help nonprofits amplify their online presence and equip them with the tools they need to grow. I'm your host, Jamila Robinson, and founder of Elevate Your Impact. And today I have someone with me who I am so excited to bring to the table and have been wanting to do this for a while. Dr. Susan Nichols is a powerhouse in the nonprofit space. And she's the founder of Connecting Communities Consulting. With over 30 years of experience, Susan helps nonprofits build the systems and structure and clarity they need to create sustainable impact. Today, we're diving into why nonprofits struggle and how to overcome it. Susan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So let's jump into some commonality first.
Okay.
We are both Texas Tech alum,
We
right?
are.
We're not going to date ourselves and tell us class of whatever, right? But we both walked the same campuses at different times.
Sure did.
And I've just gone back not too long ago, and what our dollars did for these new kids. It's a different place, right?
It is. It's grown. Lubbock's grown a lot.
Yeah, a whole lot. Anyhow, you have a bachelor's degree from Texas Tech, specializing in substance abuse, and a master's from the Houston Graduate School of Theology, and a doctorate degree from Bakke Graduate University, focusing on transformational leadership and cultural transformation. What influenced you to study the fields that you chose?
Yeah, well, that goes way back. So starting with Texas Tech, honestly, I didn't know much about Lubbock. I didn't know much about tech, but my older brother went there, and he's 6 years older. So I did visit once when I was younger. And then when I started looking at schools at the time, I knew I wanted to study substance abuse. I thought originally I was going to be a drug and alcohol abuse counselor. That's where my trajectory I thought was going. So that's what led me to Lubbock. They had, at that time, I don't know if you remember this, they had the #1 substance abuse program in the nation. Yes. They were really cutting edge with sober living, with all different availability for students in recovery, and just the academic side of that. So that really intrigued me. And so that's what led me to Lubbock, and graduated there, and just on a personal level, met my husband at Tech, and we ended up getting married.
I married my college sweetheart too.
Did you really?
Something in the water in Lubbock,
no
apparently.
way. Yes. That's amazing. Yeah, so, and honestly, when he was looking for a job, because he graduated a semester before me, I was like, dear Lord, I'll go anywhere but Houston, Texas, because I was from Houston. And what do you know? My husband's only job offer was in Houston, Texas. After crying for 3 days and saying, okay, I'm going wherever you take me. We got here, and honestly, I did work at a drug and alcohol rehab as my first job. I was kind of in that path and got promoted very quickly to administration. And I realized I liked the business end of nonprofit as much as the relational end. So that was kind of significant for me.
Yeah.
But at night, my little side non-grassroots level nonprofit side was coming out, and I was doing a lot of urban development, 4th Ward, west of the 5th Ward, Port Houston, some of those areas that I was really digging deeper into, really grassroots level urban development.
Okay.
And during that time, And we were doing that through a church. It was part of the outreach that they were doing. And during that time, I was working with students, you know, of all economic statuses, of different living conditions. And it was really challenging me, you know, and challenging for me, my theology. And so they were asking me all these tough questions that I was like, how do I feel about that?
Yeah.
And started studying and stuff. And I was like, I might as well be getting a degree. I'm spending a lot of time preparing to talk to these kids.
So on to degree number 2?
Yes.
Oh my
so
goodness.
that I started looking around for who could fit that niche for me. Houston Graduate School of Theology, that was interesting because they are Quaker-based.
Really?
Yes. I didn't know Quakers still existed.
Yeah.
Didn't know much, honestly, about Quakers at the time, but they were the first abolitionists, you know, some of the first abolitionists in the Christian movement. Mm-hmm. Ran the Underground Railroads, you know, just all sorts of different things that they did for equity and equality, and deeply rooted in their biblical beliefs.
Yeah.
And that resonated with me.
What timing for you?
Yeah. So I ended up going through that degree and got my master's in theology, and then obviously was finished. We were just having our kids. I had my first child. And after having our first child, my husband was like, you know, I'm going to start an education fund for our son. So when college age time comes, we've saved up some money. And he goes, I'm going to start an account for you. And I was like, what? Why? I just got done with my master's. That's like asking someone when they birth their baby, when are you going to have your next one? I was like, no time soon. So oddly enough, years later, I was very involved with what's called the Christian Community Development Association, which is people all over the nation doing grassroots level community development. And I learned about the school, Bakke Graduate University, and it was actually birthed out of the Billy Graham movement. They felt like they were equipping a lot of pastors in seminaries, but not a lot of practitioners, not a lot of just common good kingdom builders in communities. And so it was a school that combined business, theology, and urban development. And that was my jam. That was my 3 things colliding.
Yes.
And so started that program, and then found out that they have a leadership track. You know, people always ask me because no one's heard of the university, and even if you're in the mainstream Christian sector of any kind, you know, everything's denominationally affiliated.
That's right. And
this is very global and very kingdom. I was a minority by far, both as a woman and as an American, right? So I went to class with people from all over the world.
Wow.
And I explain it by a typical class for me, no lie. This was an actual class I was in. The woman sitting to my right in class was running for Prime Minister of the Bahamas. I had a gentleman to my left who played, you know, he played in the NFL. He had a couple Super Bowl rings on him, and he was developing a chaplaincy program for Wall Street. And then across, I would have a tribal leader from Africa that was dealing with apartheid in their country. So that was the kind of think tank environment I was in to really learn to take this whole thing to the next level. And so it made sense for me to focus on cultural transformation, because that's both an ethnic culture transformation and corporate culture transformation. I studied as many books about industry and manufacturing and how to change business culture as I did about relational culture amongst different ethnicities.
What an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
And that really leads into my next question, because Houston is such a diverse city. Like, what inspires you to keep doing the work with that knowledge?
Well, it's funny because I didn't realize that, of course, when I started out on this venture.
Right.
Right? I had no idea until I would say late 90s, I started really doing research on the city.
Yeah.
I was really curious. At the time, I was an executive director of a nonprofit, and I'm very research-based in how I do things. And so I was studying under, from afar, Stephen Kleinberg with the Rice Kinder Institute, right? Houston is the most studied city in the U.S. for over 40 years. And with
just in case you guys don't know, Houston is such a unicorn. You cannot compare it to any other place in the world. I've
literally done, I've been across the U.S. studying nonprofits for many years.
Yes.
And I've been to New York, I've been to California, I've been to Jackson, Mississippi, I've been all over. And Houston is so unique. It's totally different context. And people don't realize, because according to the Entropy Index, we're the closest in the United States to being a fourth white, a fourth black, a fourth Asian, and a fourth Hispanic.
Yeah.
In fact, Fort Bend is the most diverse county in the United States. And it's just so rich with different culture. It's with different mindset. I did a lot of work in Northwest Houston. Our school district alone spoke over 120 languages, within the district. I mean, so people don't realize it's like the world is at our feet.
It really
right?
is.
And I have always referred to Houston.
And some of the best food.
Oh my gosh, the food's amazing. There is no place like Houston for food.
Yes.
It is. It's so underrated.
Thank you, diversity.
And we're really under the radar.
Yes.
When it comes to issues like this. I've called Houston many times when I've spoken the undercurrent of world power. I really believe that. There's no other place where your neighbor could be on a global board for oil and gas company making decisions for the world, literally.
Very true.
And it's just this great microcosm for nonprofits too.
Right.
It's like this little nonprofit lab.
It is. It is. We're one of the most philanthropic cities. We are. We truly are. Yeah. So your nonprofit expertise involves developing boards and executive staff. It also includes consulting with nonprofits about operations and organizational structure. What struggles and what triumphs have you witnessed while working with nonprofits?
Yeah, so I'm the type of person, I walk into a room and if people ask me what I do and I say I'm a nonprofit consultant, they literally pull me aside and tell me the worst possible scenario that's going on in their nonprofit. Like, what do I do?
I've been looking for you.
Thank goodness. You don't know me. You don't know my board. Please help.
Yes.
You know, and so here's what I've found about most of the 9 times out of 10 who engages me, to work with them, I find that there lies a huge engagement communication issue between the executive leadership, the executive director, or CEO, and the board. And I go in to look, that's how the emphasis in the board portion got really strong because people started asking me to come in and do board workshops with them and really help understand the dynamic and best practices of boards. A lot of people don't know they're coming from industry, serving on a nonprofit board, and although some of the principles may be the same, the methodology it can be very different.
Yes.
So it's equipping, it's a learning curve. It's a learning curve. You can't think you come from a high-level oil and gas company or finance company and can come in and run a nonprofit board.
Right.
You have to learn and sit at the feet of your director and learn. And vice versa. A lot of directors are visionaries, sometimes not a lot of business acumen, and they need to up their game on their business skill and their business understanding and understand their nonprofit is a business.
That part.
It is a business.
So many nonprofits start without even knowing that they are starting a business.
Yes, and that it's work.
And it's work.
And it's, you're an entrepreneur.
Yes, you've just put on an entrepreneur hat.
As a founding ED, you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so there's business development, there's accounting, there's all of the infrastructure.
And that's where comes the structure piece, right?
Yes.
So once you're into that, you realize you have to look at your structures.
Yes.
You know, I'm the type of person, I'm like, if you're looking for someone to come in and dissect your finance, number one, that's not my strong suit. I can do the structures and systems around the financials. But all you're going to do, all your finances are, in my opinion, is a snapshot of how well your structures and systems are.
Very true.
And it's just going to give you a temperature, you know, and not that it's not important to grow those things, but more than likely, if you got to grow those things, you're going to have to go back and revamp and realign your efficiencies and your structures and systems.
Amen. Walk me through your consulting process for a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So somebody comes to you and says, Susan, I need you.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Yeah. I usually start with a discovery call.
Okay.
You know, people can go online and book a discovery call. Even if we've met in person, I'll let's do a discovery call and really kind of find out their overall issues and what their need is, and if I'm the right fit for that.
Yeah.
You know, because quite frankly, I have a very specialized area and things that I like to stick to that I'm good at. And I also have great connections with other consultants and other people that have strengths in other areas. And so, or I know from there, if I need to team up with someone and bring someone on under Connecting Communities Consulting to work with that client. The second, and I typically ask if readily available, because usually the executive director is the one who approaches me, but even on the discovery call, if they can have their board chair at the meeting, that's great. If we get past that stage and decide, this is really something that let's dig deeper into, I go on site for a consultation. And do an in-person consultation where I'm pulling out what the objectives are and what are the main pressure points and what are the areas that we need to focus on for a project and engaging in a project. For that meeting, I do require that the executive director and the board chair and or board representative are in that meeting. Because then after that, I would do a proposal and we start, if agreed upon, we start the project. And once the project ends, I do a full board presentation with recommendations around the objectives that we set for the project.
So it sounds like it's really important to get that stakeholder buy-in at the beginning
before
you move forward.
Yes, because really, quite honestly, because I've been an executive director, and I know what questions and context of nonprofit, when I meet with an executive director, it's an easy sell. They're like, oh yes, we need you. But the buyer, your true buyer is your board. And that's who the executive director is accountable to. Even if they're a founding director, they're an employee.
Very true.
Of the board. And so you want buy-in, and that you do want that. You don't want to go in and start a project or make recommendations that aren't going to be implemented. Right? You need
that's a waste of everyone's time.
You need full buy-in. So that's how I go about the process.
That sounds very well structured. How do you approach cultural sensitivity and inclusivity in consulting projects?
Yes. So, good question. So I actually did my doctoral study, my dissertation on increasing cultural sensitivity in racially diverse communities. That was my whole project. And kind of when you're doing a thesis for a master's, what you're doing is you're combining your everything you've learned into a thesis, into a paper. But what's different about a dissertation is that you're expected to bring new perspective to your field. You're expected to develop the research that produces some results where you're adding contribution to how your field works well and how to do that well. Mm-hmm. And I've always had the perspective in nonprofits, the nature of nonprofit, you are doing diversity work.
That's right.
I'm a certified diversity executive. I purposely got that certification because it goes very much in line with, because you're trying to give people equitable access to resources, right?
That's right.
So that means dealing with a lot of different people groups, and that means finding common goals, for that audience. So the way I bring it to the table is I first recognize there's a huge difference between cross-cultural communication and intercultural communication. Cross-cultural is more like you have a norm group and you're trying to get your other group to adhere to what the norm group is. Intercultural is more reciprocal learning. It's more reciprocal learning around cultures and having cultural sensitivity. So to have cultural sensitivity, you've really got to develop those cultural skills in order to get cultural competent, I discovered two things during my research, and this kind of leads to how I apply it to my nonprofit work. The two things, there were 16 themes I found, but two things really stuck out to me. Number one was exposure. Mm-hmm. It's totally different when you're in a context different from your own in the learning seat.
Yes.
I like being the minority in the room. And the reason why I like that is because I like to learn. And I like to understand context. It doesn't mean I don't have my own views. It doesn't mean that I don't have certain belief systems, but it does mean that I'm putting myself in a position of learning.
Yes.
The second thing is what I coined as guided risk. I've discovered that people are more likely to have these kind of conversations, any conversation out of their comfort zone, if they feel like it's in an environment where they're being guided through that and they know that it's a learning process. It's not as scary. They feel bolder asking certain questions. And so I translate that to when I'm working in communities or with a client that I walk them through those guided risk processes and exposure processes. Sometimes by very unique means. I've taken people to live homeless, to experience homelessness.
Yes.
In fact, my staff, I was like, if we're serving the homeless and we don't know what it's like, there's a disconnect there.
Right.
So let's, not forever. Let's do this 3 days.
Yes.
Yeah. And do this thing. So I've done things very out of the box. I did demographic tours of my community for years. I've taken hundreds of people on them, where I put people on a bus and take them around the community and educate them about the community and let them see, because we're so busy with our lives going to and from different places.
In our own little bubble.
In our own little bubble, in our own little world, to breathe enough to take the time to really understand the context of where we live and how that compares to other areas.
Absolutely. How does storytelling play a role in your consulting with these nonprofits?
Yeah, so I'm a connect the dots person.
Yes.
I mean, I like to help people see the decisions they make in their nonprofit, how that's going to affect them 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. That's my visionary part coming out of me.
Yes.
And storytelling comes into play because I've seen a lot and experienced a lot in the nonprofit world. There's very few things that shock me anymore. I mean, this is not my first rodeo, a million times over. Yeah. Right? So I've good, bad, and ugly. I've experienced a lot. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, with my own story, I've never had the luxury of my own story being private because I've been an extrovert my whole life because of circumstances in my life, my story has been very public. So in fact, I sometimes hold back in sharing my story not because I'm not transparent about it, because I realized many years ago it can be overwhelming for some people.
Yeah.
So that includes for me, I lived in foster care for part of my teenage life. In fact, I got to Tech because I graduated high school on a Friday. I was at Texas Tech by Sunday because I had no place to live.
Wow.
I mean, that was my reality.
Yes.
Right? I've gone through that. During my time at Tech, I lost a parent to suicide. I lost my mother to suicide. And then more recently, probably it's been almost 11 years now, I was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of leukemia that was very public because of my role in my community and having so many connections. And so, because of that, both my own story and my own experiences in the nonprofit world, I've been able to be transparent about those things when it's appropriate, right? To help people understand. The other perspective that gave me is I've been on the receiving end of nonprofits, right?
Yes.
And when you are on the receiving end, and then you're a practitioner, and then you're a consultant, it's a more fluid understanding of the nonprofit world.
Yes.
Right.
Because you've sat in all the chairs.
Yeah. And it's almost like when I was in my bed at MD Anderson, I was like, okay, now how does this work in a nonprofit setting? Who do I need to call for this? How do I navigate this? Because I'm in a nonprofit system and structure.
Yes.
Right? And so that's given me it's been a blessing. You don't realize it at the time because went through a lot of suffering to understand that perspective, but so worth it. It's been used in so many amazing ways in my life that it's been helpful for me in my career.
As you've already stated, you've been in the game for a long time. There's almost nothing new under the sun for you. When it comes to that, have you worked with your dream client yet? Or if not, who is that? What do they look like?
Yeah. So in many ways I have, because my life is right now, particularly this season, my life has come full circle in many ways. I've worked with clients that provide wishes for terminal patients and people in domestic abuse. Right now I'm working with a foster care agency, consulting with them, working with a board that had a very public and tragic loss of a director.
Oh, wow.
And they're rebuilding and just kind of rebuilding in that area. So in many ways, I'm doing that right now. My ideal client to me, though, my dream client, isn't so much about what they do. It's I want to work with clients that love the relational aspect as much as they understand and want to get to know about the business aspect.
Yes.
Right? And I don't mind messes. I'm not a conflict avoider. Messes don't scare me, obviously. I've lived through quite a few in my life.
Right.
And to the point where I'm not numb to them, but like very few things intimidate me.
Yes.
And so what that allows me to do is walk nonprofits through messes, right? And I don't mind that. I really don't. I'm a straight shooter. What I do mind is, you got to want to change. Right? I'm not going to want to work with a client that is able to identify the mess, but not wanting to work through it. And like all of us, we all say, oh yeah, I want to deal with this. I want to get through this.
And then we get to the work.
Then you get to the work and you go, oh no, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't mean I'd have to do that. Right?
Yeah.
And because it's work.
Yeah.
And it's a financial commitment. That's the other thing. A lot of grassroots level nonprofits don't realize the financial piece that goes along with this and how much time and effort they have to put into the financial piece,
Right.
and running a business.
Absolutely.
The only difference is your profits are going for mission impact and not aligning your pockets.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only difference as far as the main pivotal difference. And so, yeah, my ideal client is ones that want the best for their organization, that want a more sustainable organization, and are willing to do the hard work and roll up their sleeves to get it done.
Perfect response. As we close out, are there any parting words that you would have for that struggling nonprofit that knows, okay, this is my purpose, but somehow I am not able to scale or to grow this beyond myself? What do I do? How do I figure this out?
I've often told nonprofit leaders, especially founders, hold your vision loosely, because a lot of times we have in our head, because we're visionaries, of how things are going to look and how we envision things to turn out. The best thing I can tell you is when you've identified who your target audience is, who you're reaching, the community you're working with, is to really sit at your feet of your community and listen. Because they have the answers.
That is so true.
They do. They have the answers.
Yes.
You're there to walk alongside them as a resource, and you have the tools and the connections, or you're developing those to help meet their need, right? So it's not going to be, it's not this for mentality, or I'm doing something for someone, or I'm doing something to someone. You're doing something with somebody.
Yes.
It's a totally different shift in your paradigm thinking to know that you're walking alongside a community, or in my case, walking alongside this nonprofit to help them attain the vision that they have for their organization. And always thinking about, and I almost sometimes hate the word client, but it's the best descriptor. Always putting your client first, always thinking about that. From the very beginning, funneling through a process of your organizational framework to think, am I fulfilling the vision? Am I fulfilling the mission? And what are the core values? What are the things that we really believe in? And building around that framework. And with that, yes, the vision's going to be beyond you.
That's right.
That's a healthy feeling, honestly, because it's not about you.
Yeah,
it's going to include you,
and
but
it's going to
not
be
about
even better
than
what you envisioned.
Yeah, because different than maybe selling a tangible product itself, where you're producing and selling a tangible product. Your product is that you want community. Community is going to be what sustains these organizations.
That's right.
The development of community around understanding the business component, understanding the relational component, understanding the connecting component. Those are the things that are going to sustain the nonprofit.
Agreed. Well, Susan, thank you so much for your time, my friend.
Thank
It is
you.
always a pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
And thank you all for joining us for another episode of Elevate Your Impact. I hope that you've learned something here. If there's anything that you have a specific question about, put it in the comments of this recording, and we'll try and get back to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.